home.
Yes.
And so that it's not a mountaintop experience, it's simply experience.
Yes,
Right.
exactly. Okay, so time for one more question.
Okay.
This one is from Jane in Queensland, Australia. She says, I have been experiencing deep fear, dread, even moments of terror, and I recognise it's not new fear, but rather it's been sitting in the background all my life. And here's the big point. She says it's no longer in the background, it's no longer hidden. And she has become afraid of the fear itself and is asking, can you offer guidance on what to do to help with understanding and dissolving the intensity?
We chose this question on purpose because it is an advancement, I would say, or just follows on to the last two sets.
Yes.
Except that it is more personal for Jane. And so whatever you've experienced, Jane, it's probably been very profound that this fear would be there to such a degree. But then suddenly when the light is coming on, you're seeing it as always been there, and it's ugly. In fact, it may even be disabling. And that is kind of the feeling I get from what you're telling. I'm going to give you another premise of Kryon that he's said that you have to remember. It's simple. It's harder to, I would say, implement, but it's a simple understanding. We, you, me, Monica, the rest of you, are not alone in this pursuit of light. And so what I have done in certain situations where things got overwhelming, and that's me, this is your teacher, when they've gotten overwhelming is I just sit down and I say, Spirit, take my hand. I know you're here. I know you're watching. I know you're with me. Take my hand. Let's get through this together. In other words, don't consider this is something you're going to have to solve by yourself, especially if you're watching this, if you're part of the Circle of 12, you've made a little commitment to look beyond the 4D of yourself, and you know that these things are there, and that the Creator loves you, and that there is help all around us, and I get help. I can tell you, I didn't get solution to my problems right away. What I got was peace. That's really all I wanted at the moment. And sometimes I just raise my hand. And I just feel the peace coming over when I get overwhelmed with layers and cascading issues. And they happen to all of us. In your case, Jane, I think this is going to work because you are not a dark person. The duality in all of us is always there. And it's, by the way, it fights you. If you have seen the light and you're starting to come out of it, it's going to fight you. Do you feel it? In your case, it's a very heavy duality. Whatever you've been through and whatever is there does not want to go away. This is when I just raise my hand and say, Spirit, shine the light on me because I want the magnificence to come forward. For me, it works because I get a deep peace immediately. When you're peaceful, you start to be able to solve things and get to see it in a much better light, no pun intended. But I think there's a little more savviness about who you are. It settles me down, I know. So, Jane, I hope that helped with you, and thanks for that question.
I think that's a beautiful answer, Lee, and your key word struck me about feeling peace, because sometimes you really can't change the situation, or when you're in that incredible fear, afraid of fear itself, finding that whatever gives you peace in that moment is the solution, isn't it?
It is. It really is.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a whole nother seminar. That's a whole nother program, if you want to say, what does peace have to do with anything? You know, and it really, I mean, you go there and all things are possible.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's go there right now. Let's go into the core of our being, where we have an eternal fountain of peace. Inside of every human is eternalness of your soul. And it is always in a state of peace. How does that feel for you to be peaceful? When I ask, imagine yourself in the most peaceful, relaxed environment. Where is that for you? That is an image or a feeling you can always call to yourself in moments that you need it the most. Perhaps your peace is floating on the ocean or in the river, somewhere floating in water. Perhaps your peace is in a forest with trees and birds. Perhaps your peace is on a mountain. Or perhaps your peace is with your loved ones. Wherever that place is for you, it is eternal. And in this eternal space, we welcome the beautiful, loving messages from Kryon.
Greetings, dear ones. I'm Kryon of Magnetic Service. Again, I will say to you, there is complete and total awareness of Spirit on the other side of the veil, creative source, God, whatever you say, complete awareness of this moment. That you are here listening, hoping perhaps for an energetic message that would be directed for you. Indeed, it can be and it will be if you understand it's a personal message. It always is. It doesn't lay there for the masses. It's personal. You have come to this place on purpose to listen. And that is the point. That is a reaching out of you, if you thought of it or not, an intent, if you thought about it or not, to hear something, to feel something, to learn something. The messages that I am giving this month, 4 of them. This is number 2. I call them the catalysts for healing. Now, when you look at the word catalyst, you could define it. And you could define it scientifically if you wish to, chemically if you wish to. I'd say it's an energy which helps change something else. It's a concept which helps understand and change something else. That's how we're using it. So these catalytic energies to healing are things that we are saying, if you have this, it will help with the healing. That is something perhaps very unique for you. Whether it's to be healed of a disease, whether it's to be healed of an attitude, or a concept, or fear, that's a healing. And this is why this second one is so important. Let's review. The first one was be aware of how strong your words are. And some of you will say, what does that have to do with healing? And we fully explained it. Because your words can actually change the chemistry of your body, and that starts chemistry, healing, and changing, and longer life, and so many things. Now we get into something that's just a little different, because it has to do with attitude. But the attitude we're going to speak of is very, very important and has been lost by so many. Here it is. Number 2, find your inner child. Now, there are those who say, inner child talk again. You know, Kryon, I've never understood why that's important, why I should. In fact, there are scripture verses that I read that say, when I was young, I thought as a child, and now that I'm adult, I don't have to anymore. Indeed, that scripture verse, by the way, means something completely different than what I'm telling you now. I'm telling you to rekindle and capture back something all of you, or most of you, had. I talked to those in many cultures, but the majority of you had beautiful childhoods. Now, there may have been issues with your parents or later on, but when you're really young, It's different from any other time in your life. Indeed, there are some of you who said, well, I've had a really, really ugly childhood and this and that, but you had friends who didn't you? So let's pretend with me for a moment what it was like for them or what you saw. Most of you did, and here's what I'm getting at. You had a time when there were no worries at all. There just weren't. When you could play. Even if your parents were difficult, you can get outside of that bubble and play with your friends, and you didn't have the stress you have today. The stress that may be caused from what's going to happen next. What am I going to do about my job? What am I going to do in these times when there is lockdowns and all these? What's going to be next? What's going to affect me now? The fear that some of you have just from life itself. The worry. What's going to happen now? What's going to happen with this or that? Whether you're talking about the society or the government or the planet or darkness or light, you worry. But you didn't as a kid. You really didn't. In fact, one of the biggest worries you had is, how long can I play? Can some of you remember this? There is a sensation there, innocence, joy. You don't know the things that are coming because they're not anything. You may see them on the face of your parents back then, but you didn't experience them. This was a time of joy and laughter and innocence when you didn't worry. Now, why am I saying to you, rekindle the inner child? If you can go back to that state willingly and capture what you already have experienced and bring it to the forefront, it becomes a catalyst for that which is peaceful, that which will give you the lack of worry, dropping the fear, because you can remember being in that state. Still, there are those who say, I don't want to do this. I don't want to act as a child. I don't want to be seen stupid. And you're taking this way too literally, dear ones. We didn't ask you to behave as a child. We asked you to think of what it was like to be in a state of innocence in these first few years, till you're about 6 or 7 or even 8, when you were simply discovering the fun things and the beautiful things, and you can play with your friends and you could have little fantasies, and none of the things of earth touched you, not the way they do today. If you can go there and recapture even a portion of that, there's an interesting thing that starts to happen. The most interesting thing I can tell you is this, is that this body of yours, and now we're talking about the innate, wants you healed. Of course it does. The innate, we have talked about before, is the smart body, starts to understand what your consciousness is striving for. And in that, and we've told you this before, there starts to be help. And it's not coming from the outside. It's not even coming from angels and guides. It's coming from within. So that innate of your body, that smart body, that all it wants to do is create health for you, the innate, will start to then create avenues where you can pull in more of your inner child, including remembrances. It's an odd thing, is it not, to think that you have got a part of your own body system that is waiting and wanting to help you with things. And you thought you were in charge of everything. You're in charge of opening the doors. There are literally portals within your chemistry that are waiting to hear from the boss. And your innate is one of them. And that innate of yours, that smart body of yours, sees what you're doing and says, let's help. I see she's doing it. I see he's doing it. Let's make it even better, because the innate knows the more you can relax into the inner child and start to then drop those fears that you have because you're remembering it, the healthier you're going to be. I'm going to say something. The more you can capture the inner child that is there, the healthier you're going to be, and the avenue will be clearer for the harder things. There are still some that say, I don't know, Kryon, you don't know my upbringing. I can't remember good things. I know you're out there, dear ones, because I know who's listening. So let me give you something that is far more esoteric than even you wanted to hear. You wouldn't be watching this program unless you were a little bit esoteric, or perhaps even more, members. So listen to this. Non-members, yeah, I'll tell you, perhaps you got to work a little for what I'm about to say, but I'll tell you the membership that is listening now is more aware of these kinds of things. Do you believe that you've lived before? And most of you will say, yes, I do. I want you to go to that lifetime which is in you, which you remember, which is in your innate and in your consciousness. Past lives are still there. I want you to go to that childhood that was perfect and beautiful. Even if you have to look at a friend and say, I want to be that one, perhaps that was yours. I want you to go there, and I want you to experience what that would have been like because you lived it in a past life. Bring that forward. Mine it like a miner digs for gold. Go to your Akash and mine it and paste it upon yourself. Is that too strange? Whatever is needed for you to see the innocence, beauty, joy, and laughter of a child that you were at some lifetime, if not this one, will be valued by your innate, and you can pull it right to you. What does it get you? What does that really do, Kryon?